joining us for this afternoon. I knew that was going to happen. So yes, this meeting is being recorded. I hope that's okay with everyone. I'm sure you're used to it by now through this week of RDA sessions. But yeah, it's top of the hour now. So thanks to everyone for joining us for this Birds of a Feather session. We're just going to give everyone a couple of minutes and then we'll get started. There are collaborative notes. We can share the link again for people who are just joining us. So please go ahead and sign in. And yeah, we'll get started in just a minute. Okay, so it's pretty much 2 minutes past now. I can see we've had a few more people join, but starting to slow down now. So I think at this point we'll get started. So yeah, welcome everyone. Welcome to this Birds of a Feather, the last session of this, what seems like 2 weeks worth of research data reliance. Yeah, well done for making it to the end and still having enough energy about you to consider joining a Birds of a Feather session. So this is going to be a Birds of a Feather session about defining common attributes for data repositories. And you can see the list of co-chairs on the screen, but we'll do more to introduce those and ourselves in a few minutes. So what's the aim of this Birds of a Feather? So the Data Repository Attributes Working Group is seeking to produce a common list of attributes that describe data repositories and to provide examples of current approaches that different data repositories are taking to express and expose those attributes. So that's why we're here. And to kind of let you know what we're going to be doing over the next 90 minutes, here's a brief agenda. So I'll start by doing a bit of the background, giving you an introduction to the co-chairs and the background to this work. That has already been some work that's gone before that and how we got to this point today. And then the other co-chairs are going to talk you through the proposed deliverables that we're looking to produce as part of this effort and the work plan and timetables. And we're really interested to hear from you and get your feedback and discussion to help us refine this work and make sure it's going to be as useful as possible. So we're really aiming for this presentation part of the session to be less than 45 minutes. And some of it may even be shorter than that, to cover the first 4 items that we have there. And then the second half of this session will be about feedback and discussion on the ideas that we're going to be putting forward, as well as the deliverables, work plan and timetables. And the idea is that we'll break up into smaller groups to do that. And Michael has already showed that he's an expert on the Zoom room breakout functionality. And so he'll be able to handle all of that for us. And as you will have seen, but if you've just joined us, there are collaborative notes. And so if everybody could open those and sign in, that would be great. And we'll also be using those as we go further through the session. I hope that all sounds okay. That's what people expected. If anybody has any questions, we can take those now, but otherwise I'll carry on. So we have a range of co-chairs that are going to be working together on this effort. So I'm Matt Cannon. My job is the head of open research at Taylor and Francis Group. So one of the journal publishers. I'm based in Oxford in the UK. My job is looking at all different areas of open research, but I've spent a lot of time looking at the Taylor and Francis data sharing policy and getting buy-in from the different journals that we publish, encouraging more authors to share data aligned with their research papers. Do the other co-chairs want to unmute and introduce themselves?
I'm next on the list, so I might as well carry on and we can go down in that order. Hi, everyone. I'm Alison and I work on fairsharing.org. I have a background in biology and in semantics and ontologies. And I started out at the EBI in Cambridge and I've moved over via Manchester and Newcastle, ending up at Oxford. I am really looking forward to working in this working group. In fact, this is my very first time co-chairing a working group. And I'm also really looking forward to having a discussion with everyone today about. That's me, I think. Did Washington, was he unable to get on at this stage? He was having issues. So
yeah, he's not here. He's not here.
So maybe Kathleen?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Kathleen Shearer, and I'm the Executive Director of CORE, which is the Confederation of Open Access Repositories. We are an international organization with over 150 members and partners from around the world. And our membership really is organizations that manage repositories or have an interest in repositories. So a lot of our repositories are institution-based or generalist, but increasingly data repositories as well. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Michael Witt. Thanks. I'm an associate professor in the Libraries and School of Information Studies at Purdue University in the US. One of my day jobs is that I manage our institutional data repository. And then along with my colleague, Robert Ulrich at the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology in Germany, we co-lead re3data.org. Re3data is a registry of research data repositories spanning all disciplines in all countries, both open and commercial. And this topic of ours of defining a common set of attributes that describe a data repository is really central to what we're about. And we're very much interested in being able to interoperate with other registries, with other publishers, funders, with other services and infrastructure in this space. And Kazu, you're here. Fantastic.
Yes, thank you, Michael. This is Kaz. Very, very good early morning from the Far East country, Japan. I'm head of the Research Center for Open Science and Data Platform, NII Japan, which has a mission to provide a national level research data infrastructure, which also includes the repository, which can be used for the data repositories. And I'm also a vice chair of the core, working with Kathleen, and very interested in how our data repository could be used for the international communities. Thank you. So let's go back to the Matt for our the proceeding.
Thank you, Kazu. Glad you could join us, and thanks for staying awake. So I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes giving a bit of a background to this Birds of a Feather session. So this isn't necessarily a new topic that we're talking about. Some of this work has been going on in different working groups over the last 4 years. Previously, some of it was under the banner of the Fair Sharing Working Group. At the plenary 14, which was Helsinki, this working group shared a set of features and criteria of repositories that have been put together mainly by publishers, but also some other stakeholders to help try and identify features of repositories that might be useful for publishers to steer authors in the right direction when they receive comments or questions about storing data. The first draft of these were published, and there was a lot of feedback from the community, and I think to say it was mixed is a good summary of how it was received. And then at piece 17, which was the one that was notionally in Edinburgh, there was a fair sharing working group session discussing all the feedback with representatives from a number of different working groups. So myself and Chris Graff from previously of Wiley gave a presentation on behalf of publishers, but there was also presentations on behalf of repositories from people involved in the trust principles, Elixir and Core Trust Seal. So lots of people involved in repositories and the various stakeholders concerned there. And whilst some of the communication and things leading up to that had been had kind of in written format, it was actually a really good meeting. We had lots of good discussion and debate, and ultimately decided that there was value in continuing this discussion, but potentially it needed a broader set of stakeholders to move it forward. And that is what happened. At the end of that session, at the Edinburgh session, we had expressions of interest from over 50 individuals, and the co-chairs that you see before you today stepped forward, kind of representing the different communities. So myself looking at publishers, and then we have the two main repository catalogues, Fair Sharing and E3 Data, and obviously Kathleen in her role looking at open access repositories, and then also some nice representation from other communities, both from Japan and our co-chair from Washington from Brazil. So I think hopefully we have a nice group that covers all of the bases that will look to take this work forward over the coming 18 months. I guess I should also say at this point that we've created a draft statement that we will look to put forward to the RDA to make this a working group in the future. And the next part of the session will be kind of sharing what we've put into that draft document, but we'll then use your feedback and comments to refine that before making a submission of that later in the year. So that is all that I had to share. So I'll stop sharing and hand over to Alison, who I think is going to talk through the deliverables that we've drafted.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. And I just have to work through the multitude of my windows because the window I had prepared seemed to have mysteriously disappeared. There we are. And I will cover the deliverables that we have written about in our case statement that we are going to discuss today. Here we are. So first of all, let me move the chat window for Zoom. That always makes a black box on my Zoom app. We have the first deliverable, which is a common attributes list. And within that, we want to describe those attributes from that describe the data repository itself. And this includes a definition of each attribute, the rationale for the use and the value of each attribute, the feasibility of the implementation of that attribute. Because of course, sometimes when you really want an attribute to describe a portion of this, you find that actually in practice, it's not so useful. So what we want is not just an attribute that everyone seems to agree is a great idea, but also one that is practically speaking the right thing to do. A gap analysis of the current availability from the data repositories. So of course we have quite broad scope. We have a lot of data repositories that we can draw upon and compare with each other using these common attributes, and we can find out where such an attribute is already present and where it isn't. These are the basic common attributes, the common attributes within that we want to list. And what we want to do is just get an idea from you if this makes sense, and perhaps if you have some other ideas about what we can include. And then ultimately, the deliverable will be a final list that's submitted for review to the RDA, and we will look to have it become an RDA recommendation. We also want to address the fact that there is previous work in this area, and if you have a look in the case statement, you'll find a list of such previous work, and you can see how we are looking to harmonize and build upon what's come before. The second main deliverable is an exemplars of existing approaches. Yes, so we want to look at examples of current approaches used to express and expose those common attributes. And we want to present a selection of those exemplars as a RDA supporting output. And these are two very specific deliverables, if you'll pardon the pun. We really want to present something that is, when I say common attribute, what I really mean is common. So we've got such a broad group of stakeholders from among you guys present today and among the people who are present at RDA 17 and expressed an interest in working with this working group, and also among the co-chairs coming from all over the place. And we look at what's come before, we present a list of attributes, and we look and see how popular those attributes are now and whether or not maybe new attributes are required. And we really present two concrete results in terms of the list itself, the attributes that we would recommend, and that hopefully that would mean the RDA would recommend, and also these exemplars of existing approaches, because so many data repositories are doing such great work in providing information about this. Now, I realize that these are the only slides I've got. I did consider beefing it out, but what I really think is important here is going on to the work plan and the timetable, and then ultimately with each of us co-chairs going out into the breakouts and really talking with you guys about it. So the takeaways for me to you are a list of common attributes and exemplars that currently exist among the data repositories in the RDA. If anyone has any questions at this point, this is still a very high level set of slides, and then the next will go into a little more detail. But if you have any particular particular questions at this stage, I'm happy to take them. But other than that, I'm happy to pass on. So we have review of work plan and timelines next.
Give me 1 second. I'm on the wrong slide. Okay, hi everybody. I'm just going to reiterate a little bit of what Allison said. So again, like I think there's two aspects to what we're trying to achieve here. One is to produce a list of common attributes. And I think, you know, when Matt did his introduction, one of the things that the community learned over the past, you know, few months when we got into the discussions about this was that there are different requirements. So different communities have different ideas of what information they want to know about a repository. And so we saw with the data selection criteria that matter what the publishers want. Funders want something else. Repositories are in a position where they may not be able to expose those characteristics for one reason or another. And so what we want to look at is bringing together a number of different stakeholders to identify what characteristics and attributes of repositories are important to them, and see how aligned they are across those different communities. And then the second aspect is really about verifying and validating that with the broader community and making sure that those attributes are feasible for the repositories to be able to expose, and they are also considered legitimate attributes as well. And so basically those are the two aspects of our work. And so basically what we'd like to do, we are going to present the case statement after we get your input from this BoF, and hopefully our case statement will be approved. And so the plan is really to start in January if possible, and have probably monthly meetings via Zoom. It's going to be challenging, of course, because if we want to get geographic representation, there's always issues around what time we meet, and maybe we'll try to have those meetings at different times of day to make sure that there's a chance for people in different regions to be able to participate. And of course, we're going to try to make all of the progress of our work available to the community as we move forward. So the work plan really is, again, around these two aspects of our work. So what are the current, what's currently happening in terms of the existing frameworks around what information some communities have already published in terms of what they want from repositories. Again, like there are a variety of funder requirements coming out now. There's the trust seal, there's the core community framework, there's the re3 data, metadata recommendations for repositories, and so on. So we're going to bring all of those together and take a look at those. And then we're going to probably look at some use cases, because the use cases are important because they provide, the rationale as to why these are important. And so if we find out that some of these use cases really don't seem that important, maybe that attribute is not that important for the repository to expose. And, this really is like a balance, because there's effort on their side of repositories to be able to expose these attributes. And so we really need to provide a strong rationale as to why it's important before we ask repositories to make those efforts. This is essentially 1, 2, and 3. And then in 4, we're going to take a kind of draft list of attributes with their rationales included and validate it with the broader community, which is you and many others who have indicated their interest in this work. And then we go to the second aspect of the plan, which is, how do you expose that? So if you're a repository and you're being asked to show these attributes, what is the best methodology? Where is it in the is it on your entry screen for your repository, or where, how is it exposed in a way that different types of registries like re3 data or fair sharing can find that information with ease in a maybe kind of a standardized way, And so I think that's what the second aspect of what we'd like to do here, and provide perhaps some exemplars of how it's done from existing repositories. And then, of course, do some dissemination activities and promote the adoption of the recommendations that we eventually come up with. Or they may not be recommendations, but they will be at least the outcome of the different communities here and what they are hoping that repositories support. And so that's our plan, and here are our milestones. Again, I already mentioned that we'd like to submit the case statement and hopefully have it approved to begin our work in January. And then we'll get started right away, and I think we have an 18-month timeline for all of this, so we need to keep moving. And what I'm thinking is going to happen is we'll have these monthly meetings, but in between the chairs will be kind of doing some work behind the scenes to advance things. And so I'm not going to read out each one of these milestones, but there they are. And I guess that is the end of my presentation. And maybe I'll just quickly stop to see if there's any questions from attendees. I think I maybe need to stop sharing so I can see the participants. If there's any hands up or you just want to open your mic, please go ahead. And if not, then I'll turn it over to Michael.
Thanks, Kathleen. So if we were meeting in person, this would be the time of the BoF where, we'd all count off and go to different tables and have facilitated discussions, and then, come back at the end and report out. The Zoom equivalent of that, of course, are the breakout rooms. And so now, even though this is somewhat fraught with peril, I'm going to go ahead and attempt to assign everybody to a breakout group. We'll have 4 breakout groups. It looks like we've got about between 35 and 40 participants, so that should work out to no more than 10 people per group. Each group will have one of the co-chairs in it. The co-chair can help facilitate the discussion. We're going to take about 45 minutes, give or take, for this activity. And this is really your opportunity to ask questions, to share your ideas and your brainstorms or your concerns about the work that we're proposing to do. We really want to get, really want to hear from you on this and have this be an engaging and participatory exercise. So 45 minutes, small group discussions. The chairs will facilitate. We'll also try to take notes. It would make it easier on the chairs if people in the small groups could also take notes. These will all be in the collaborative notes document that's been shared, the link to the Google Doc. And then we'll, after 45 minutes, we'll come back and each group will do just a very quick, like 2-minute report out, just kind of hitting the high points and validating maybe what previous groups have said, if there's something that's repeated, or introducing new ideas. And then, of course, once this is all done, we as the co-chairs will take this input, we'll use it to improve and refine our case statement, which we hope to submit, no more than like a week after the plenary. And then we'll give you a heads up when that has been approved for community review, and invite everyone to give further input on that. So I'm going to go ahead and advance to the next slide here. And we have 5 questions that we want to start with. And the chairs will go through these, they'll have these. But this is really just to get the ball rolling. We hope that you'll have your questions also that you'll want to ask, and that's all. There's no question that's off limits. So if there are any questions now on kind of the mechanics of this, I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen sharing. And someone said I was an expert at Zoom. That is not the case. We did an experiment in the 15 minutes before this session to see the breakout rooms, and it seemed to work. And so I'm going to go ahead and create our 4 breakout rooms. Everyone's going to be assigned automatically. So you may know the folks in your room, you may not. And then chairs, just remember that you may get assigned 2 to a room, and then I'll move you to another room. In about 40-45 minutes, there'll be a 1-minute warning, and then the Thanos snap, and everyone will rematerialize in the main room for the report outs. Okay. And the rooms are now, let me make sure I've got everybody in. Give me just one moment here. Great, the rooms are open now and you should be able to join them.
Michael, just a reminder that Kazu and Washington are coming into my room. If you could just,
correct.
I'm in room 1, so
we'll do.
Thanks.
Looks like people are materializing. This is good. We're going to give it a couple of minutes to let people leave their breakout rooms. I think the 60-second clock started about 20 seconds ago. Meanwhile, if co-chairs want to kind of organize your thoughts for your 2-minute report out, we'll do that once the room is full.
Hello, everyone. Before you all start again, and while everyone's still returning from the breakout rooms, I just wanted to say thank you to the co-chairs and to Joy and to everyone in my breakout room and to everyone who's come today, because it's been fantastic. But I need to nip out for childcare related reasons now. And so my lovely members of Breakout Room 4 are valiantly taking up, and they will summarize for me. So thank you to Reuven, Robert, and Nina. So I will say goodbye for now, and thank you all very much.
Thanks, Hudson.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, thanks everybody. I'm really interested to hear the kind of the summaries from the other breakout groups. We had a really lively discussion in ours. Was someone from Allison's group able to report out? Did someone volunteer?
I might do so. So yeah. We started maybe with the first question. It's probably everyone else. As I'm working with Read the Data, I see a big use case for it to have a common understanding of what a repository is and how it is described, so that there is some interoperability between the more generic and the more specific registries. And we then had the discussion about actually what's the definition of a data repository? Do we include software? How does it differ from a database? And so does it even matter to specify it ex ante, or is it exposed by, okay, if it covers software, then it's software repository, it has something else in it. Might be even that if it's generic enough that it fits other registers that have some kind of physical samples behind. So that's something that should be at least, if not answered, but clarified what is covered with data repository. And what's included with the description here. Especially software repositories is something that we discussed due to the emerging importance within the research data world. So with that, the examples would also be really useful to have it here, that it's easy for others to see what is covered, and it's not only abstract and academic, but also that we have the input from the different communities and the different fields, and maybe even from the different regions. And then we also started with the last question, if we are interested in participating, as obviously we are operating with data here. So there was only one answer, yes. And there's probably a lot of to contribute with expertise, knowledge, and adoption of the outcomes. So then we had the third question, if we include effectively engaging stakeholders. So there might be, so our assumption was there are others that might be really good input, for example, the FAIR for research software working group here in the RDA. So there might be other working groups here that we want to reach out and include maybe in a joint session in the upcoming plenaries. Also to make use of the geographic spread here of the chairs. So for example, Japan maybe isn't that well represented right now in with the data with all the different infrastructures there, so that we reach out to this and also maybe China or India, so that we make use of the different people here that have different connections. So that might be a task for the working group to keep a list of stakeholders that we want to involve and that are relevant, as it might be during the process that different stakeholders pop up and we see, okay, this should be someone to be included.
That's good, Robert. Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other points in summary?
For the 4 point, the different standards, that's also something, keep it up to date and especially look into the subject specific ones, the virtual observatories or the geosciences that have different standards. There might be other ones that have specific descriptions that aren't covered with the generic ones that we usually cope with. And so reach out to them and
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Matt, can we pass the baton over to you for your group?
Sure, thank you. So we had a nice discussion and was generally pleased that we had kind of broad agreement that this would be useful and that most of what we were proposing seems sensible. We agreed, there was kind of agreement that a set of use cases would be very valuable for multiple stakeholders and could be used, I think, from a colleague from E3 Data to improve metadata quality. We thought that there should be links with certification criteria, and what we're asking may overlap, but we want to be really clear that we're not looking to replicate any kind of certification standards that currently exist. In terms of the second question, we had a point about whether we could use the FAIR principles as a way of grouping use cases. So thinking about use cases around findability, accessibility, for example, as well as via stakeholders. So obviously we've got a range of stakeholders involved in the project. And we also had, we've got lots of kind of written notes with different standards that we might want to look at. But one of the other comments was we may want to be explicit about why certain standards are relevant, but also certain standards aren't. So if we're going to be kind of collating our list of features from big lists, there may be reasons why we leave out certain things. We may just want to be clear about that. In terms of other stakeholders, we thought that maybe funders was one that was missing. Like we feel like there's more mandates coming from funders about how people use their data. And we may, whilst they're not really prevalent at the moment, we may want to get ahead of that and maybe ask some funders what they think to make sure that we're kind of future-proofed a bit in case things start to arrive. And then also the question about regions also came up. We might want to think about Africa and China as some other regional gaps that we have in terms of stakeholders. And within the European context, whether we want to talk to Horizon Europe, but also EOSC. So I don't know how much work's going on in EOSC in terms of creating information about repositories and whether there may be some work that's gone on there. I have no idea whether that's how they're doing it, but I'd imagine that there must be some EOSC related work finding about information about repositories. I think that's my main points from my summary.
Thanks, Matt. Terrific. Kathleen, do you have a couple minutes of updates from your group?
I do. So there was some overlap, which I won't repeat, but I think a couple things that we talked about that haven't been mentioned yet are, how we get this balance between trying to expose a variety of different attributes which are mapped to requirements of different communities, and again, the feasibility of repositories to expose those attributes. So just noting a challenge there. In terms of deliverables, like how can they be used by different communities? I mean, one of the things that was mentioned by Tristan was, he in the past he's gone through to the landing page of these repositories to try to find out information, just whether they have DOIs or basic information, and either the information is missing or the information is presented in a very different way by different repositories. So there's a lot of value in trying to standardize what information is available to the public about those repository operations, and what also and the way it can be exposed maybe in a standardized way to the community, and that will be very helpful for publishers, for funders, for the users of those repositories, for people doing research. We had Yi, who's doing research on repositories. So I think there was a strong agreement in our group that this would be very useful for a number of different communities. One of the things that I was a bit worried about, and so I wanted to hear from our group, was, is this feasible in 18 months? Because it's a pretty ambitious work plan that we have. And Irina suggested that what we do is have two task force. One's that is looking at the attributes, and one is looking at recommendations about how those attributes are exposed. So the task force looking, making recommendations about what repositories could do in a standardized way to share that information with others, and the other could be a recommended set of common attributes. And I thought that was a rather good idea. We discussed also the potential value of having machine readable information about repositories, so that it can be used also by machines. So that's another thing that was mentioned a couple of times, and the value that might have for the community. Let's see, we also mentioned the need to have national funders, perhaps more input from national funders, because there are requirements coming down the line, and also potentially some Indigenous communities, at least, running our draft attributes by some Indigenous communities to make sure they are relevant for them as well. And I think that's basically it. That's unless any of the others in my group thought I missed something important. And if not, then I'll turn it back over to you, Michael.
Thanks, Kathleen. So we've got a minute or two left in the session. So I'm going to wrap up without doing a report out, but I'm going to very diligently make sure that the notes that we captured go into the collaborative notes document, and would encourage everyone to do the same. After you sit and think about this for some time, if you want to revisit it and plug your ideas and questions back in, we won't close that document for writing for at least a couple of days. Just on behalf of the co-chairs, we want to thank everyone for your active participation in this Birds of a Feather, especially being the very last breakout session of RDA. You guys are champions. We'll take the list of attendees and email addresses, and we'll let you know once our proposal has been sent in and hopefully approved by TAB. And you'll have the additional opportunity to give community input during the review phase. Otherwise, we really hope to be able to engage in this work in 2022 and 2023, because we believe it's really important work, and we're glad that you have an interest in it and may be on this journey with us. So with that, everybody have a great day. Enjoy the last plenary session, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye bye.